Okay, we are going, and let me introduce Rachel. So, like I say, Rachel is our evaluation contact, and with ACET Inc. And we use Rachel for all the evaluation work that we do and that our subawards do. And evaluation is immensely important because what other way can you tell a story with numbers and figures and pictures and all that stuff? And it's so crucial to all the work that we do. And so we're very happy to have Rachel here with us today and to have her talk about the evaluation toolkit training a little bit. Rachel, when you're ready, go ahead and lay it on us, please.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sean. Nice to see everyone here. Thank you to the Good Health and Wellness team for inviting me to today's symposium. I'm really excited to share the revised and updated evaluation toolkit with you all today. And I saw that Sean in the chat put the link to the evaluation feedback form for today. So I just wanted to make a verbal plug for that. When you have a moment after everything ends today, if you could share a little bit about your experience today, that helps us. That's a part of evaluation. It helps us learn and improve next time. So again, yes, my name is Rachel Engh. I work at ACET, and we've been had the honor to work as the external learning partner with Good Health and Wellness. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and get going. Just going to share a portion of my screen here. All right, great. Can I get a thumbs up if you see my slide here? Okay, awesome. Thanks, everyone. So I just have a couple slides to go over, and then I'm going to share a PDF of the toolkit. And this is a PDF that you'll receive after today, and we're really excited to present it to you today. So it's a revised toolkit, and it's been really a collaborative process with the Good Health and Wellness team and GP Tech to put this toolkit together. So before we dive into the toolkit, I just wanted to kind of zoom out and talk about why evaluation is important. And I want to talk about why it's important on a couple of levels. So the first one is, why is it important for tribal communities? So essentially, if you're able to understand the change that your programs are making and why that change is happening, you can really bring that knowledge and learning to inform other programs that your organization is doing. And it also helps identify and inform decision-making on the leadership level. So if we can tell the stories of our work and the changes that it's making in our communities, it can really help shape the future as well. Evaluation is also important for Good Health and Wellness program. This program supports a number of subawardees that we've already heard from some today, and we'll hear from the rest later today. And so evaluation helps us understand our efforts across all of the subawards. And that's important because we also tell the story of our work to our funders, which is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. So evaluation is important at that level for the CDC because this project, the Good Health and Wellness in Indian Country program, has the long-term goals of reducing rates of death and disability from tobacco use, diabetes, heart disease, and stroke, and reducing diabetes. So the CDC wants to understand if the organizations that it's funding across the country are contributing to these goals. They also have the responsibility to hold their grantees accountable for the work that we said that we would do. So evaluation is a way to tell the story of what we've done and the changes that have come from it. We're very excited to share this revised document with you. As I mentioned, it's created in partnership between ACET and GP Tech and the Good Health and Wellness program. So you might remember the previous toolkit. We really built on that. We made it have less text and have it more visually engaging. And so a big thank you to Madonna, who designed this final PDF. I have one more slide and then I will share the toolkit itself. This slide shows the contents of the toolkit. This is what you'll find. And we envision that this toolkit will be useful for both subawardees of this program and beyond, and other tribal communities in general. We hope that this toolkit will be helpful for you as you engage in evaluation efforts. So what you'll find in this toolkit is we start off with talking about the value of evaluation for public health agencies. And then we introduce the Indigenous Evaluation Framework as one framework to create culturally tailored evaluations. We then kind of walk through the steps that you might take to do evaluation in your communities, how to set up a local evaluation, and then options for identifying and collecting data and information. And then we present ideas for how to analyze and share your findings. So really how to make sense of the information you're gathering, and then ways that you can communicate your findings to a variety of audiences. We end with a description of the types of evaluation technical assistance that subawardees can request of ACET and of GP Tech. And then finally, we have a few appendices that include common evaluation terms, and then a worksheet to help clarify program goals and activities that you can use as a way to start the evaluation process. And then we also have 2 sample completed evaluation plans for fictitious programs as a way for you to see examples of how to put together an evaluation plan in your community. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and then share my screen again and pull up the toolkit. Okay, here we go. Could I get a thumbs up that you can see this PDF? Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful, thank you. So as I mentioned, this is something that you'll get access to after today. And I just wanted to take a few minutes during the symposium to run through what's in this in a little bit more detail. And please feel free to ask questions in the chat along the way. We'll have time for that at the end. So this is the front page of the evaluation toolkit for the Great Plains Good Health and Wellness program. I'm going to scroll through the first few pages. It's just acknowledgements, the table of contents, which I already referenced, an introduction about the Good Health and Wellness program, and just why this document is important. So just wanted to scroll through those things. I wanted to pause here on page 6. The bottom of page 6 and the top of page 7 go into the Indigenous Evaluation Framework, which is one framework that guides the Good Health and Wellness program's evaluation efforts. And so on page 7, we go through the 6 principles of the framework, which talks about, what we value in terms of this framework, how we do this evaluation work with respect and to serve the tribal goals. So this framework really is at the core of all our work that we do with this program for evaluation. Next, we talk a little bit, I'm going to make this bigger, about the types of evaluation. So in this program, we talked about two types, process-based and outcomes-based. So process-based here provides learning opportunities as the project develops. It focuses on completion of tasks and/or activities. It tracks information, and it can be easier to report and track process-based evaluation. We also have outcomes-based evaluation, and that allows you to track metrics and understand trends. So it really goes a little bit deeper to explore potential connections between what you're doing, your project activities, and improved outcomes for community members, providers, and systems. So this could be a little bit more difficult to report and track, but it's also an important part of evaluation because we're really making those connections between what you all are doing and the changes that are happening. So for those of you who have done evaluation plans with us before, this might look familiar because we do ask to focus both on process and outcome-based types of evaluation for the subawardees' evaluation plans at the beginning of each year. We talk a bit about potential barriers to evaluation and how you might overcome those barriers. And then starting on page 8, we really start diving into the steps that programs can take to evaluate their work. So evaluation planning is the first step, and it's really, we encourage the program staff to be involved with evaluation from planning all the way to sharing the findings. And that's really important because you all are closest to the work that's happening in your communities. Another part of this toolkit is you'll see throughout these boxes that have promising practices. So this is a way to just highlight some promising practices around evaluation, things you might want to try in your communities. So this evaluation planning, it is divided up into 4 steps. The first 2 are on this page. So identifying project goals and objectives, and then creating evaluation questions or evaluative statements. These questions and statements really outline what information you want to know through your evaluation work. Here we include 2 examples of evaluation questions and then Indigenous evaluation statements. When you create questions or statements for your own communities, you can decide if it feels better to phrase what you want to know in a question form, like on the left, or if you want to phrase it more as a statement on the right. So these are examples of how an evaluation question could be turned into a statement here. An example is, what have community members learned about traditional practices of collecting and preparing traditional foods through participating in cooking lessons? And the corresponding statement is, we want to know what knowledge was gained through cooking lessons about traditional practices of collecting and preparing traditional foods. So those are examples of evaluation questions and statements. So back to the steps of evaluation planning. So this is before you even begin collecting data. You'll want to figure out who you're going to be collecting information from and how. So in other words, how will you answer this question, or how will you explore this statement? Who are you going to talk with? Who are you going to ask to fill out a survey? how will they share that information? So that's an important step, but in terms of evaluation planning. And then finally, who will gather that data and when? So data, and this is our next section in this toolkit, can be gathered in a lot of different ways. And so part of that planning is figuring out who on your program staff or others might be collecting that data. Maybe it's through a sign-in sheet or through a survey. And when will that happen? You know, maybe you decide you want to do data collection before the very first day of a program and then the very last day of the program to see what changes might have happened. So really figuring out who's collecting that data and when will set you up for success during the evaluation. This promising practice just notes that sometimes it's helpful to create a target in terms of your data collection. So maybe you want to have 3/4 of all people who attend a class to fill out a pre and post survey. So having that target can sometimes help you meet that goal of data collection. So the next part of the evaluation toolkit is identifying and collecting information. On this page, we talk about the different kinds of knowledge that are really described in a lengthy way in the evaluation, Indigenous evaluation framework document. So they talk about traditional knowledge that's handed down through generations, through stories, origins of clans, and encounters between ancestors in the spirit world. So we have traditional knowledge, empirical knowledge, which is gained through observation from multiple vantage points over an extended time, and then revealed knowledge acquired through dreams, visions, and spiritual protocols. So I think it's just important to acknowledge that information comes in many different forms and how we can gain knowledge in these different ways. I also like this image of a nested layers of knowledge. So we have cultural milieu, subjectivity, and facts. So I think this is a nice way just to acknowledge that there are different ways of knowing, and that will influence how you do evaluation in your communities. Because we really want communities to gather information that is useful for your tribal communities and respectful of participants' time and honors their feedback. This next page, Table 3, outlines different ways that you can collect information and some of the pros and some of the cons of each one. So this first column here is the type of data collection. So for example, this first one is observation, to observe and count phenomena in the environment. And then we offer things that are good about this kind of tool, and then things that might be limiting or cons. And so we hope that this table is helpful to you as you decide how to collect information. Because there are so many ways, this can be a table that you can go to and see these are only some of the options. There are more ways to collect information, but a good list to start with, and then it can help you decide which ones you choose based on what information you want to collect, how much time you have, how much staff time you have to do that. So other examples of tools here are, I already mentioned sign-in sheets or program records, storytelling, focus groups, interviews, and then surveys. So you can refer to this table along the way as you plan your evaluations and decide how to collect information. So after you decide how to collect information and you do the data collection, either through surveys or observation, program sign-in sheets, however you decide to collect information, this next step is to make sense of all that information you collect. Typically, there might be two types of information that you collected: quantitative data and qualitative data. So quantitative data is information that can be counted. It's numerical. So it could be the number of people who attend an event, the number of people who come to, who use a walking path, the number of pounds of produce distributed. So these are like numbers that you can count. Qualitative information is non-numerical. It's more based in stories, kind of open-ended questions. They can be photographs, interpretive drawings, responses in an interview or focus group. So sometimes qualitative data can be more time and labor intensive to collect, and it can be a really beautiful way to tell the story of your work, to combine qualitative data with more numbers and numerical data. So yeah, and here in table 4, we, for qualitative data, we offer an example of how you might make sense of the qualitative data. So here we have a quotation, this is made up, say you had a cooking class and you had a survey at the end, and someone said, in the cooking classes, I learned about traditional ingredients and how I can use them in the dishes I make for my family. So one way to kind of create a theme from that quotation is knowledge of traditional ingredients. So when I do qualitative analysis, I look at all of my data, all my qualitative data, and then I sort it based on the themes that I'm seeing. And it's really, it is a scientific analysis, and I bring my own kind of thoughts into this analysis, so it's nice to have more than one person making sense of qualitative data, because it is a bit more subjective than kind of quantitative data and analyzing numbers. Yeah, so, and then lastly is once you've collected information, once you've made sense of it, then it's sharing what you learned. So how to use evaluation data. There's no single one right way to share your results. There are pros and cons to different communication methods. And the next page includes some ways that you can share your findings. And one thing to consider before you decide how to share your finding is, who is the intended audience for your evaluation findings? And that will really inform the ways that you decide to share the information. So this table 4 is strategies for sharing evaluation findings and the pros and cons. So this first column here is not an exhaustive list, but it does include many different ways that you can share your evaluation findings. And then some good things about those formats, and then some maybe drawbacks. So reports, for example, or a detailed summary of the evaluation, and some good things about in a report is that it can be detailed, comprehensive, and rigorous. On the other hand, it could take a long time to write or to read. Key messages can get lost. And then for each communication strategy, we include an ideal audience for that communication. So often funders request evaluation findings in a report. Another example might be an executive summary, which is brief, focused summary of key findings from your evaluation. An ideal audience for this could be community groups. It's not as long to read, there's not as much text. It still takes time to write, but it could be more easily digestible for a variety of audiences. Other examples of ways to share information, and I know many of you do these things, are newsletters, multimedia presentations, a dashboard, fact sheets, social media, meetings or professional conferences, and then other creative strategies. I've seen some communities present evaluation findings in like a comic book style, where it's very visual, very accessible, and it includes some key findings from the evaluation. So when you get to the point where you're ready to share your findings, I would invite you to take a look at Table 4, and hopefully that will help you make decisions on how to share what you learned through your evaluation. This last section I won't spend too much time on. It does talk about how we can support tribal communities with evaluation. We also have a little bit about GP Tech and what services they can provide. A little bit about ACET, the company that I work for, and then here are the appendices. So I mentioned these at the top, but this is a page of common evaluation terms and their definitions. So some of them we refer to in the body of this document, qualitative data, quantitative data. This could be helpful for you to reference, common terms and what they mean. And then these are some tools that you can use in your communities to help you with evaluation planning. This will look familiar to the subawardees on the call. We work with the subawardees to do an evaluation plan every year. This is what I had talked about before in terms of really planning how you're going to collect data and from whom, who's responsible for collecting that data. So having it all in one place can be helpful as like a path, a North Star that you can keep referring to during your program so that you can remind yourself, oh yeah, we decided to collect data in this way and at this time. This is an example of a completed evaluation plan. So you can, and this is from a fake program that we just made up. So you can refer to this to see an example of data sources, targets, people responsible, and the schedule or timeline. So this is for a fake program called Traditional Foods Gardening Program. We include another example if you'd like to take a look. And then finally, this is a goals and activities worksheet, which can be really useful as maybe the first thing that you do when you are starting to plan your evaluation. It really involves thinking about, what do we want to achieve through this program? What are our goals? What are our objectives? And then from that, what are we planning to do to achieve those goals and objectives? And then our resources. What are we leaning on in order to do those activities? Maybe it's staff, maybe it's equipment, time. So this could be one way that you can begin thinking about evaluation in your communities. Finally, we end with resources. There are so many resources out there around Evaluation 101, evaluation planning, data collection. So this resource list is grouped in certain buckets in terms of the different steps of evaluation. These are about sharing evaluation findings. And we do include Indigenous evaluation resources as well in this list. Yeah, so that concludes what's in the toolkit, and I'm really excited to share this with you. I hope that it's helpful for you and your communities. Like I said before, we hope that this is not just helpful for subawardees to this program, but also beyond. So I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, it's been a long time coming, updating the evaluation toolkit, and I think it looks phenomenal. There's so much good information in there. And what I really like about it is it covers all the basics. It makes sure that you have a really good foundation to start off from as you go forth into your programming endeavors, and how to showcase, tell the story of those programs. And the impact that it has for your community. So immensely important. Did anyone have any questions for Rachel about the toolkit or about evaluation in general? And I think I'll go ahead and stop our recording. If anybody has questions, we don't need to record those.